For many farmers, groundwater is a means to making a living. But what happens when what is below the surface is also a mecca for divers? That's the situation in the southeast of South Australia, where some of the country's most spectacular and famous cave diving sites lie under sheep properties and dairy farms. As Kerry State reports, it's led to an unlikely relationship between landowners and underwater explorers. What grows out of this ground keeps Graham Kilsby's farm south of Mount Gambier running. But as the third-generation lamb producer focuses on turning this paddock into productive pasture, a convoy of visitors arrives. And it's not the land or livestock they've come to see, it's what lies beneath.
Well, as a farmer, we're obviously more focused on above the ground and what we can actually make from the land. But now we're finding that there's a lot more interest from different groups about what's under the ground.
The sounds and sight of divers gearing up in the middle of a paddock may seem out of place, but this is a routine that's become second nature to senior instructors Gary Barclay and Linda Claridge. Although for the latter it wasn't a natural fit when she started 25 years ago.
No, it terrified me from day one. Cave diving didn't come easily to me. I did the first course and thought that was as far as I wanted to go. It took me some time to become relaxed in the caves, but once I did, the enjoyment and the love for it just continued to grow.
Got your fins down there?
Yep.
Yep, no worries, we should be ready to go.
Oh no, we'll stagger down there.
Also in the group today, Victorian farmers and long-time dive buddies Kelvin Ball and Stephen Meyer. They may be more familiar with what's going on at the surface than the others, but when the tanks are on, it's their time out.
You get up in the morning, you're on the farm, you go to bed, you're on the farm, and just gets me away. Nobody can get you on the phone or anything, it's great.
Kilsby Sinkhole is certainly a world away from the daily grind of farming.
It's a whole different world underground. It's the closest thing you can get to outer space.
This 65-metre deep sinkhole is renowned for its crystal clear water and the rays of light that pierce through it on a sunny day.
A couple of 100 metres back into the cave, and a depth of 40 to 50 metres, you can look up and still see the clouds. So that clarity of the water is amazing.
The huge and dramatic cavity make it one of the most popular dive sites in the southeast.
Some amazing big ones, like massive amphitheatres that you get into, and it's like you're floating in the middle of the sky almost. It's just that you're the only one there, and there's walls way off in the distances either side. Yeah, and it's real thrilling to see that, yes.
Surprisingly, it's a site owner Graham Kilsby is yet to explore, even though he's grown up with it in his backyard.
One day I will. I don't know. I suppose it's a little bit like that thing that if something's in your backyard, you don't actually use it. I do a lot of sea diving. Somebody asked me, a diver, why haven't you been in here? I just sort of say, well, if there's not a crayfish in here, why would you bother?
It may not be a fishing hotspot, but Kilsby's sinkhole has seen plenty of action. Police and Navy divers use it for training. And back in the 70s, the Defence Department leased the site for weapons testing.
They were actually punching sonar buoys under compressed air into the water. So rather than dropping them out of a plane at a very high altitude, they were actually punching these sonar buoys into the water.
He may not have explored what's under his property, but Graham Kilsby does use it to make the most of what's on top. The father of two runs a prime lamb operation with more than 2,000 breeding ewes, so good feed is a recipe for success. While this is pretty decent farming country anyway, with a high rainfall, when things do dry up, Graham Kilsby pumps water out of the sinkhole to irrigate his pasture.
It just means that I can finish off my lambs instead of actually selling them when they're either not ready or the market price is low because of a glut of lambs. So, yeah, it's just meant that I can farm a little bit differently.
I'd love to have what they've got under their ground so I could water our crops, but...
Diver Kevin Ball crops cereals and pulses at Pimpanayo in Victoria, 3 hours' drive from Graham Kilsby's place. He's farmed this country since picking up the reins of the family business in his 20s when his father died. And understanding what happens on farms certainly helps when it comes to getting permission from other landholders to access what's under theirs.
I get along well with them. We've supplied grain and all that stuff with them, so sort of makes it easier when you want to do something a little different in there to be able to talk on their level.
He may not have a hidden asset on his place, but he says it's generally pretty productive land. However, you wouldn't know it at the start of this season, when the underwater world he escapes to was looking a lot more attractive than what was facing him at ground level.
Very dry so far, as you can see. It's hoping for some rain next week, but at this stage it's very dry, and yeah, we've just got to wait and see. Put some seed in the ground and hope it comes.
All good.
Right. The weather may make or break his year on the surface, but one of the good things about his hobby is it doesn't matter if it's wet or dry. The tricky part sometimes is just getting in. This portal into the underwater world is so small, equipment has to be lowered separately. But the humble entrance, hidden among cows on a dairy farm not far from Graham Kilsby's place, is very deceiving.
You got me? Yep. See you later. Hello? Diver?
We've had people that have dived all around the world too have come to here and they just couldn't believe the size of the room that we've got under our feet here. In the middle of a cow pack, in the middle of nowhere. Other places they go, they're in the side of mountains and stuff like this, but this is a perfectly flat land pretty well around here. You can't see water on the top of it anywhere, but there's a lot under it.
This is the shaft. It's the darkest and deepest recorded sinkhole in the region, dropping more than 120 metres. It was discovered by the owner's grandfather when he was ploughing a paddock and the horse put its foot through the surface. This pile of rubble 35 metres down was the family's unsuccessful attempt to fill it.
Yeah, we tipped the stones down it and we really didn't have a clue how big it was underneath, and we had no hope of filling it up. It looks like an anthill down there, and we've tipped 1,000 tonnes of stones down there.
Trevor Ashby is a third-generation dairy farmer, milking 350 Holsteins. Like Graham Kilsby, he's thankful to have the groundwater, with more than 100 hectares of pasture under irrigation. It allows him to keep milk production going at the same pace all year round. But while he brings the water up, he has no interest in venturing below.
It's no value to me. I'm not a diver. Yes, the water underneath we make a living out of, but it's not to the divers. It's world class. To anybody sitting on top, it's just a hole in the ground with a lot of water underneath.
The excitement it does incite in divers from across the globe is captured in a visitor's book the family has kept since the late 60s. But among the rave reviews is also a poignant reminder of the risks. 4 red crosses alongside the names of the divers who died in the shaft in 1973.
Those 4 that did dive had no ropes or guidelines or anything that day that when it did happen, and they didn't know how big it was, and it was just unfortunate that the way the caves made, or the limestone formation. They just got trapped coming up.
There is no doubt cave diving has a dangerous reputation, and at a glance the statistics support that. From 1969 to 1974, 11 people died cave diving in the Mount Gambier region, including 2 at Kilsby Sinkhole. But there have been far fewer fatalities, 5 in 40 years, since a National Cave Divers Association was set up and training standards introduced.
Caves don't usually kill people. The caves aren't doing nothing. They've been there for a long time and they'll be for a lot longer. So it's the people that are entering, whether they make a mistake or something like that, that's where the problem comes into it. And it's when things go wrong, knowing how to cope and deal with those issues underground, that's what gets you back again.
Among the challenges they have to deal with are nitrogen narcosis, also known as the martini effect because it can make divers feel drunk, and becoming disorientated, especially when navigating through silty water.
Up is not always out in a cave situation, so direction's the biggest challenge. We overcome that really quite easily, as long as rules are followed, by laying a line wherever we go.
But as Graham Kilsby knows all too well, even with rigorous rules now in place, sometimes things go wrong. A few years ago, a third, this time experienced diver, died in the sinkhole on his property.
It had a big impact, really. It was really quite upsetting for me and for my father and for the family, really, to think that somebody had drowned here again. With all the training that people do nowadays, you wouldn't think that it could or should happen, but obviously at times things do. There was a story that was done just...
The family considered closing the sinkhole, but even at surface level, Graham Kilsby knows he's sitting on something that's more than just a farming asset, and he doesn't want to see it go to waste.
Oh yes, for sure. Every time I come in here, I get sort of blown away with how beautiful it is.
Until recently, only members of the Cave Divers Association, which leased the site, could explore it. But the owner is opening it up to other groups, including snorkelers and school groups, now that he has finally, after 2.5 years of looking, found a company that will give him public liability insurance.
I think that it can be turned into a real tourist draw card. I really think that we could do so much more with it and let more people enjoy it and see it.
As well as the Shaft and Kilsby's, there are around half a dozen other dive sites on farms in the southeast, including this one, which is appropriately named One Tree. Now, while most landholders are happy to keep their heads above ground, there are some clear signs below that agriculture is the main game around here.
A lot of barbed wire, old fences that's been pulled down and thrown in there. Livestock bones, skulls of livestock that fell over or got put in, one of the two. There's an old harvester in One Tree. So that's just sitting on the bottom there. That's interesting to go down and see. Somebody's obviously decided it was past its use-by date.
Some are surprised the Underwater Museum doesn't have a few more modern machines that have broken through the limestone crust.
A lot of our country we've actually bulldozed or deep-ripped dozers that weigh up to 70 tonne. And it has surprised me that, you know, that we haven't lost one of these bulldozers that have broken away, you know, the top of a cave and actually opened it up and fallen in.
For those who choose to go in, they're hoping they can convince other private landholders with underground gems to let them explore.
The challenge of a new site is always fantastic, is to find a new site somewhere and explore that to its depth or lengths, whatever it may be. It's a big thrill to put line in and have people follow where nobody's been before.
As for the farmers who have already opened windows into the world below, the view they provide is clearly leaving a lasting impression.
It's not my cup of tea, but when they come up and you see the smile on their face and how happy they are after they've been down there, I guess that's the main thing. They're happy doing the sport they love.